So hello everyone, in today's video we are going to study literary ages in English literature. Though most of the teachers start teaching the literary ages from the Anglo-Saxon period, that is our Old English time period. But I have decided to start it from the classical time period, okay, when English was not even in the cradle. Why? Because you see, this time period is extremely important for your exam purpose and many questions has been observed from this particular topic as well. So you need to understand the whole timeline starting from 3000 years ago till today. So understanding this historical timeline will give you an idea about the history and the culture influences on the literature. So this will make literature even more interesting for you. By the way, if you are new to this channel and haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe the channel so that you can get the latest update and these amazing videos on time. Okay, my name is Ekta Mukul. You are watching Literature by Logic. So let's start. Now let's go back in time all the way to 3000 years ago. I'm talking about the early classical period, which was 1200 BCE to 800 BCE. And one of our most earliest famous writers of this age was Homer. Who can forget the Iliad and the Odyssey, very famous works written by Homer, which are going to be translated and interpreted several times later on in the upcoming ages. So the next age is classical Greek period, which was from 800 BCE to 200 BCE, and the most famous philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, these people belonged to this age. So you can understand that how important this age was, since the literary criticism also took birth from this age only. That means that these writers were discussing poets, whether poets should even live in their place or not, because they can harm the society. So yeah, Plato believed that, but we had our man at that time, Aristotle, who said, no sir, poets are good, genuine people, they deserve respect too. So he presented his views in his work Poetics against his teacher's views, which were presented in Republic. So yeah, he was a rebellious student of his time and we definitely loved him for his views. So apart from these two famous philosophers, we also had other famous writers like Sophocles, Aristophanes, Euripides and Aeschylus. So from classical Greek period, let's move on to the classical Roman period now. Yeah, this was the same age when our Julius Caesar was cheated by his friend Brutus. You guessed it right, Julius Caesar ruled in this age, and there is one more ruler you need to remember his name, that is Augustus. Why I'm asking you to remember his name, that he belonged to this age? Because later on one whole age will be named after him and I will tell you why. So talking about the famous writers and their works of this age, we had Ovid's Metamorphoses, Horace's Ars Poetica, which we have to study in detail, and then we had Virgil's Aeneid. All these works were super famous at that time. And apart from these, we had other two writers who taught us how to make the work beautiful. Okay, they were Cicero and Quintilian. So under the Roman period only, we saw another sub-age known as Patristic period, which is about the spread of Christianity all across the Europe. So at this time period, we saw the early Christian writers, and you know, around 410 BCE, some barbarians started attacking Rome, and Romans decided it's time to pack our bags and protect our land. So they kind of left Britain completely in 455 CE. So after Romans left, Britain felt quite alone. So Germanic tribes said, not to worry, we are here. That's how Anglo-Saxons and Jute came into the picture. One question, who was living in the Britain if Romans left and Anglo-Saxons came there? Who were the people living in this land at that time? So they were Celts. Okay, also known as Britons, and they used to talk in Old English language. So that is how we can identify or trace the earliest English language that was spoken at that time. So why this age is called only Anglo-Saxons when Jutes were also there? See, they were very less in numbers, and most of the part of the Britain of at that time was occupied by Angles and Saxons. Okay, and see, these people were also not at peace all the time. Vikings, Scots and Picts, they were trying to attack this land all the time so that they can get their own benefits. And the good thing about that time is there were no stringent religious beliefs. If you want to be Christian, you can be Christian. If you want to be a pagan, you can be a pagan. There is no hardcore rule that you have to follow only one religious belief at that time. And what about the literature? See, at this time period, we got our earliest epic poem, which was Beowulf. Okay, and there were many other poems as well, but most of them were orally transferred from one person to another, and very few documents or manuscripts were saved. We must thank Alfred the Great here for his contribution in protecting and preserving the major text of Anglo-Saxon period. But how did this Anglo-Saxon period ended? So around 1066, there was a king, Edward the Confessor, who was very old and without a child. So he was about to die. And now the question arises, who will be the next king? So there was another person, Harold Godwinson, who said that, okay, I want to be the next king because as per the norms, it should be me who should be the king legally, okay, and like logically, I should be the king. But we had another man into the picture. He was William the Conqueror, who was from France. He said, hold my chair, listen boy, Edward the Confessor was my friend and he promised me that I will be the next king. But Harold Godwinson said, wait, how? You are from France, how you can be the next king? So they kind of argued with each other, like literally had a fight, which is known as Battle of Hastings, and obviously William the Conqueror won. So this event is actually huge. You know why? Because the whole literature will change, the language will change. Because if you think about it, technically the ruler of Britain is now French. So he will impose French everywhere, and the old English will be suppressed and it will be limited to the very common people. And the court people will be mostly talking in the French language. With this begins our Middle English period. So the early medieval period is known as Anglo-Norman period. After that, we will have our age of Chaucer, because in this age we will get our father of English literature, Geoffrey Chaucer, who gave us his magnum opus, the Canterbury Tales. A very famous work written in the Middle English, written for the common people, and it became an instant hit. So after the age of Chaucer, we saw a little dark ages in literature. Why? Because there were 100 years war going on, there were peasants' revolt, there was bubonic plague, which kind of finished 1/3 population of Britain. So obviously you can understand at this hard times how people will be able to focus on literature. So we didn't get great works in literature at that time. After so much chaos, people started questioning everything. They started questioning Christianity, that they are believing that God will protect them, but all these natural calamities, whether it is bubonic plague or the wars that are happening around or the peasants' revolt, everything is damaging their life, and their beliefs are shaking now, and they are moving towards the Renaissance. They believe that the early period of classical time, they have to bring that back. Okay, they have to write great literatures again. That's how the drama started coming back into the picture, and we observed the initial mystery plays, morality plays and miracle plays, though they were mostly about the Bible stories and saints. But later on in the Elizabethan time, we saw a range of different themes in the dramas of Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe, and who can forget the great poets Edmund Spenser and Philip Sidney as well. Elizabethan time period was indeed a golden age in English literature. After her, we had King James, and his reign was known as Jacobean period. We had great dramatists once again, like Ben Jonson was there, and we had metaphysical poets who kind of created a different type of poetry altogether. After Jacobean period, we had our King Charles I, and his reign will be known by Caroline Age. In this age, we had a very famous poet, John Milton, and who can forget his epic poem Paradise Lost. Apart from him, we also had several cavalier poets who used to write mostly to impress the king, and their themes were carpe diem, that means seize the day. So after Caroline Age, once again we had a little sad period in literature because the theatres were closed in 1642 by the Puritans, because they believed that a theatre is going to harm the society, just like in the early time period. Some philosophers believed that poets can harm the society. This time it was the dramatists who were targeted. And why this period is known as interregnum period? Because there was no ruler at that time. Okay, only Oliver Cromwell was there, who is also Lord Protector, not the King of England of that time. Even though this age was little difficult for writers, but still we got some good writers and poets in this age, like Sir Thomas Browne and Andrew Marvell. So after the death of Oliver Cromwell, there was a lot of political turmoil around who will be the next leader of Britain. Okay, though Oliver's son tried to rule, but he was not that good ruler. So the Parliament wanted a strong leadership. They called Charles I's son back to Britain from France, and Charles II was coronated, and that's how the monarchy got restored. That's why this age is known as Restoration period. See, this age is known by many other names as well. You can call it Enlightenment period. Why? Because people were using more reason this time. Okay, they were having more logical and scientific inquiry this time. This age is also known as Neoclassical age, because again they wanted to bring the same classical writing effects, okay, and their standards of writing, because they believe that the writing standard has gone down in the interregnum period. This age is also known as Augustan Age. As I already told you that whatever the famous writers were there at the time of Augustan Age, they want to copy their style, okay, they want to imitate them. They were not literally producing a lot of new works. They said that we will set the same bar by writing exactly at the same level what the Augustan writers were writing. That's why this age is known as Augustan Age, because the writers of this age were copying the Augustan period writers. Apart from that, this age is also known as Age of Dryden, because why not? Dryden was the most famous writer of this time, and he was also the first poet laureate. Okay, so this whole enlightened period, it is quite long. After Age of Dryden, we will have Age of Pope, and after Age of Pope, we will have Age of Johnson, which will also be known as Age of Sensibility. And in the Age of Pope, we had another very famous writer, which was Jonathan Swift, who gave us Gulliver Travels. Now, by the end of the Enlightenment period, we started seeing a transition period into the Romantic Age, and we can call them the early Romantic writers. In this, we can have Thomas Gray and William Blake, who set the early tone for the Romantic poets. So we can kind of say that the Romantic Age exactly started from 1798 and it goes up till 1837. Why I am mentioning this year 1798? Because this is the year in which lyrical ballads got published, and William Wordsworth and S.T. Coleridge wrote their most famous poems in this lyrical ballads. That's why it was an instant hit. Now, what were the features of Romantic Age? See, in the Romantic Age, people were not talking about the human love like man and woman. This Romantic Age is a little different. It is about nature. It is about individualism. It is about emotions. Okay. So, if we can say that Enlightenment period was more about reason and looking outward, Romantic Age is more about looking inward and talking about a human's emotion and human values more than the outside reason and logic. The later Romantic Age period saw the second generation of Romantic poets like P.B. Shelley, John Keats, Lord Byron, though most of them had a very short lifespan, but their literary career was very huge. By the way, at the same time period, we also saw great novels by these female writers like Jane Austen and Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is one of the most famous novels that you can see even today. A movie is being made on this. The Romantic Age, we saw the Victorian era, which runs from 1837 up till 1901, quite a long period. So the main literary style that we observed in this era was realism. Okay, writers focused on the realistic lifestyle of people and with more accuracy and detail. So you can talk about the writers like Charles Dickens, William Peace Thackeray, Makepeace Thackeray, and we had George Eliot and the other writers like Bronte sisters. The Victorian novels were the dominant literary forms, and these novels were serialized in a magazine. They were not published as one book, one novel, but people used to read these novels in a serial form, just like how we used to watch our series. They used to read the novels in the serialized form. Imagine how interesting that would be today. So the themes in Victorian era was the result of the social turmoil that was going on at that time. So this era was the time of industrialization, morality. So basically people used to have very strict morality. You talk about the Matthew Arnold and morality will come to your mind. And this was the same time period when Britain was ruling most of the world. So you can understand that they were continuously trying to grow, and at the same time people were getting more access to literature because they were more educated, and the industrial workers had their own plight because they were constantly being exploited and their wages were very less, and the women also suffered because of the class norms, okay, because of the social norms, and there was a huge class disparity. If there are some people who are rich, they were extremely rich, and the poor were extremely poor. By the end of Victorian era, we saw another great novelist, that is Thomas Hardy, who gave us a lot of famous works like Tess the Jubberwills, Jude the Obscure, and other famous works. Now let's talk about the modern period, which goes from 1901 to 1945. And for me, this is the most important age in literature because most of the questions has been asked here and most of the drastic events happened in this age. And you see, there is a huge change in the way people started writing at this time. They were completely different from the previous ages. So you know that 2 world wars took place in this time period, and then we also had Great Depression. So people started questioning everything, and between this we also had thinkers like Freud, Marx, and Nietzsche and Darwin, whose ideas kind of destabilized all the things that we had known about this world so far. So people understood that we are not living in a rational world which works in a systematic way. Okay, anything can happen anytime, and it is not really real that we might have a person who is looking after us, or not a person, like a God who is really looking after us. So people started breaking and questioning the meta narratives that were set so far, like the ultimate truth that no matter what, we will go to heaven, and if we will do some bad thing, we will go to hell. They started questioning all these things which doesn't make a lot of sense to them after so many events took place. You can observe that these same ideas being reflected in The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, which shows that how a person is feeling after world wars and after being realized that the world is just very different and complicated, that whatever the ideas he had about the world and religion so far. And apart from that, we also had writers like Virginia Woolf, James Joyce. So you must be thinking that this modern age was quite drastic, huh? A lot of changes happened, and all of a sudden people started questioning the meaning and what's going on now. So wait a moment, you are going to be even more surprised in the postmodern age, which starts from 1945 and it is still going on. Okay, so you see, after the world wars, both the world wars took place and all the major events happened, people just thought like, okay, let's calm down, let's bring our mind to peace, okay, and let's not be fixed to any meaning, let's not try to make sense out of everything, okay. This world seems absurd, and that's how the absurd movement also started, and we got our very famous play Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett in the absurdist movement. There were many other drastic movements that were there in the postmodern time, like the angry young man movement, or the kitchen sink drama was there. And who can forget the epic theatre by Bertolt Brecht, who tried to break the fourth wall between the character and the audience. On the literary movement side, we saw these very weird theories that actually kind of make sense, and that is a paradox. And on the other side, we had these theories like deconstruction that said that reality is also kind of a myth, and the language is never fixed, and whatever you are doing, you don't know whether everything is right or wrong. So yeah, from all over the place, new ideas were coming up. We also saw magical realism by Salman Rushdie, and then there were a lot of talks on the post-colonialism literature as well. So we had major writers like Edward Said, who talked about Orientalism. That talked about how the Orientals, the Eastern people, suffered due to the Western rule. Not only at that time period, but after the rulers left, in the psychology also, how their whole personality, the identities also changed, and how they started feeling inferior whenever they see a Western person in front of them. Overall, we can say postmodernist period is marked by its playful and skeptical approach to narrative and meaning, and it continues to push the boundaries of literature, like what it can be. Nobody can define it, and everyone can have their own versions. So there you have it, a general overview of all the literary ages of the English literature. I hope you liked the video, and if you have any question, please ask me in the comment section, and if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please do that, so I will get little more help and encouragement to continue to make these amazing videos for you. Okay, see you in the next video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.